Final Destination, Death of the Senses, Chapter 7. After what seemed like an eternity, they'd finally reached the turning. Amy was guiding the car through the streets of Forest Hills as Jack checked the street map for the exact address. Nice houses, Amy noticed as they approached the last intersection. Wonder how much they cost. More than either of us will earn in a lifetime, Jack said, now too keyed up as they approached Donahue's house to even get bitter about it. Go left here, on to Prescott, then we want number 1329. Dawson stopped, his thumb hovering just above the lighter's button, and sniffed. What was that? Lowering the lighter, he took a couple of cautious steps across his sprawling living room towards the kitchen door. There was a smell, faint but unpleasant all the same. He walked over to the door, sniffing again as he closed it, wrinkling his nose in distaste. Damn Chinese food. He should have taken the cartons down to the garage and put them in the trash. Now the smell of stale, greasy food had seeped into other rooms. Well, he could do that later, but for now the commercials were over and the game was back on. Here! Here! Jack unfastened his seatbelt and was out of the car almost before Amy had brought it to a full stop. Jack! Wait! Jack! She muttered a curse word under her breath as Jack hurried across the sidewalk and up the garden path of Donahue's large, deco-style house. Should she wait in the car for him? To hell with it. She was already in too deep with the whole crazy situation just to sit things out. Besides, if Donahue really was in danger, it was her duty to help him out, even if he did have more money than she would see in her entire lifetime. Dawson looked around in irritation at the sound of the doorbell. He knew he should have TiVo'd the game so he could pause it. Watching an exciting game was almost a guarantee that somebody would come along and interrupt it. Still trying to keep at least one eye and both ears on the game, he backed into the hall, glancing at the security monitor by the door. He'd had the cameras installed on the recommendation of the police when his negotiations with the unions had gotten a bit hairy, and there had been the suggestion that somebody might pay him a visit at home to persuade him to back down. After he'd gotten his own company under control, there had then been the minor matter of the underworld connections of some of his rivals when he'd undercut their bids for the city's contract. The cameras had paid for themselves in terms of peace of mind, that was for sure. Now the one covering the front door was showing a man and a woman. Not a bad-looking woman either, Dawson thought as he took a closer look at the person nearest the camera. If you liked Asian women, which he did. He didn't recognize her, so he pushed the intercom button and demanded to know who they were. If they were Jehovah's Witnesses interrupting the game, he was going to tear them a new one. Mr. Donahue, said a man's voice that, even filtered through the intercom, sounded familiar. It's Jack Curtis.
What?
Dawson snapped, cutting in before the maniac could start on any more prophecies of doom.
How in the hell did you find me? Whatever, get off my property before I call the police. In fact, fuck it, I'm calling them anyway.
Mr. Donahue, I am the police, the woman said. Jack looked suspiciously at the monitor.
Let me see some ID.
The woman held up what certainly looked like an authentic police badge to the camera.
Okay, now arrest this guy and get him the hell off my porch.
Look, Mr. Donahue, said the woman. It's not that simple. What he's been saying might be right. Your life might really be in danger. Dawson's heart fell. Great. Now Curtis even had the police believing him. If we could just talk to you, just for a minute, the woman continued. Please, we just want to make sure that you're safe.
Safe from what, exactly?
The woman looked at Curtis for a moment. Even with her face turned partly away from the camera, Dawson could tell from her expression that she wanted to know exactly the same thing. Please, said Curtis. It's really important. Then we'll go, okay? Dawson made an exasperated noise, then said,
Okay.
and moved to the door, first easing open the drawer in the small table next to it. There was a .38 revolver in there, just in case, and he wanted to be able to get at it. He clicked open the multiple locks and stepped back towards the table as the door opened. "Mr. Donahue?" said the woman, entering first and extending a hand. "I'm Officer Tom. Amy Tom, 12th Precinct." Dawson shook her hand, deciding that yes, she was cute. He didn't move away from the table, though. And wasn't the 12th Precinct in Manhattan, not Queens? It definitely wasn't his local police station. "And I think you know Jack Curtis?"
"We've met,"
Dawson said with a cold smile.
"So when are you going to pay up for damaging my Mercedes?"
Amy turned to Jack. "You damaged his car?" "It was an accident," said Jack, suddenly on the defensive. "And it was just a scratch." Amy shook her head. That complicated matters if Donahue decided to make any kind of complaint. She wished now she hadn't told him which precinct she was from. Why not help him type out his complaint as well? "Mr. Donahue," she said, deciding the best way to sort this out was to keep everything as businesslike as possible. "I know it sounds crazy, but there might be some truth to what Mr. Curtis has been saying. We have reason to believe that you were a target for a killer."
"The one who's dead, right?"
Dawson asked sarcastically. Yes. He was killed in a shootout 2 nights ago," Amy said. Donahue didn't need to know the details of exactly who had shot him right now. "But the first person on his list of targets died yesterday in unusual circumstances. We wanted to make sure that the other people we believe were on the list were aware of any possible dangers."
"So what, you think this dead guy has an accomplice?"
asked Dawson, starting to become interested in spite of himself. It's a possibility," Amy floundered. "But we just wanted to warn you to be careful. Avoid any situation that might be dangerous. Watch out for accidents waiting to happen."
"Accidents?"
said Dawson, back to dubious again. Jack moved around Amy, encouraging Dawson to move one hand surreptitiously in the direction of the open drawer. "Chelsea Cox died in 1,000,000 accident right in front of Officer Tom here. We just want to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to you."
"How did she die?"
Jack looked awkwardly at the floor. She was impelled by a giant icicle."
"What?"
Dawson spluttered, trying to suppress a laugh.
"Seriously?"
He raised his eyes to the ceiling, making a show of examining it.
"Well, no ice up there, so I guess I'm safe. Anyway, why are you both so worried about me?"
he said, looking back at his 2 visitors. "For a start, it's my job," Amy said, starting to get frustrated with Donahue's attitude. "And for another," she broke off, turning to look down the hall, her nostrils twitching. "Do you smell something?"
"I was, just smoking a cigar."
Dawson suddenly became acutely aware that his very illegal Cuban was still smoldering away in the ashtray on the arm of his Barcalounger. Great. Now she had a reason to arrest him. "No, not that." Amy moved towards the nearby open door, from which the sound of a football game was coming very loudly, and sniffed again. "I can smell gas."
"Gas?"
Dawson asked, the thought of the cigar now looming larger in his mind for an entirely different reason. "I can't smell anything," said Jack. "I can." Amy stepped cautiously into the room, which she saw was bigger than her entire apartment. "It's part of police training to find gas leaks, believe it or not. You," she said, pointing at Dawson, "very carefully pick up that cigar and put it on the porch. Leave the door open. Where's your kitchen?" Dawson pointed at the door as he gingerly took the ashtray. Shit! She was right. He could smell something as well as cigar smoke. "Okay, both of you wait by the front door." Amy took a couple of deep breaths and headed for the kitchen. The stench of gas increased as she opened the door. She tried to listen for the sound of a leak, but the noise from the TV was overpowering. Instead, she hurriedly opened all the windows and went back to join Jack and Donahue. "There's definitely a leak. We need to call the gas company." "Shouldn't we turn off the TV?" Jack asked. "No, it might cause a spark. Anything that's on, leave it on. And don't switch any..." She turned to see Donahue holding a sleek cell phone, finger poised over the buttons. "No!" She slapped the phone out of his hand to the floor, the battery breaking loose on impact. "What did I just say?"
Sorry.
Dawson gaped, so taken aback that he didn't even object to being told what to do by a stranger in his own home. "Don't use anything electrical in the house until after the gas people turn up. I'm going to go back in and open as many windows as I can." Dawson bent down to pick his phone up, trying to slot the battery back into the handset. This time it refused to click back into place.
You broke my phone.
"Use mine." Amy handed her own cell phone to him. "The number's already programmed in as emergency gas." "That's very efficient," Jack commented. "I like to be prepared." "Do it outside, Jesus!" Dawson shamefacedly took his finger away from the phone's keypad and went onto the porch.
This is my house,"
he complained. Amy jabbed a finger at him as she started back inside. "Don't think I don't know where that cigar came from," she warned, shutting him up. Dawson watched her go, then turned to Jack as he started scrolling through the numbers in Amy's phone.
I think I'm in love.
He muttered sarcastically.
So what's the deal with you two, then? You her boyfriend or something?
"No," Jack said. "I only met her a couple of days ago." Something in Dawson's expression suggested that he was about to make an obnoxious comment about Amy. "I'm living in her apartment now, though." Dawson settled for a look of confused jealousy before getting through to the gas company and irritably explaining the situation. Amy returned a few minutes later, by which time Dawson had finished his call and got an assurance that engineers were on their way.
Well?
He demanded. "I opened as many windows as I could. It seems to be working. I don't think it's a very big leak."
Right. Good.
Dawson tapped one of his feet on the tiles of the porch for a moment, then fixed Amy with a look.
Well, seeing as it looks like I'm going to be spending the night in a hotel until the gas clears, any chance that I can go and get my car out of the garage, officer?
"Go right ahead," Amy said. Dawson started to go back into the house. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, where are you going?"
The garage entrance is in the kitchen,"
he told her impatiently. Amy tried to remember the layout of the kitchen. Yes, there was another door in there with a couple of locks on it. All the windows were open and the smell of gas had definitely become weaker, but there might still be the danger of a spark. "Did you lock the door when you came in?"
No, it's just on the catch.
Dawson assured her.
I don't need to use a key to open it, so there won't be any damn sparks.
The cop's safety paranoia was starting to piss him off. Okay, Amy reluctantly agreed. "But leave the door open." Dawson nodded, then re-entered his house, picking up his car keys and putting on a pair of Nikes before going to the kitchen. There was still a faint hint of the rotten egg odor of gas, but it was almost overpowered by the smell coming from the cartons on the counter. There was no risk now, he was sure, although he did turn the catch to open the door leading down to the garage a lot more slowly and carefully than normal. Outside, Jack rubbed his hands together, trying to keep them warm. "How long do you think the engineers will be?" "Depends," Amy said. "Usually if it's a leak, they're pretty fast, especially if a cop's called them in." "Or some rich asshole who makes a point of reminding them just how important he is. He did that, huh? Amy asked, not surprised. Hey, where's my phone? Jack glanced into the house. He's still got it. Great. Whatever you do, don't let me forget to get it back off him when he brings his car out. No problem. Jack turned his attention to the exterior of the house, taking a couple of steps across the porch for a better look. A ramp headed off the main driveway, descending to a double-width garage door at basement level. Something nagged at him, some piece of trivia from his childhood. The garage is in the basement? He said to himself. What? Amy asked. The basement! Gas! Is gas heavier than air? Won't it sink downwards? Amy's eyes flicked wide open in horrified understanding. Shit! If he starts the car... Just as he reached the base of the stairs, Dawson heard a thump behind him and flinched. It wasn't a gas explosion, though, just the kitchen door swinging shut. Damn, he'd forgotten about the counterweight that closed it automatically. He should have wedged it open with a chair or something. Still, no harm done. Amy rushed into the house, Jack right behind her. Hey! Hey, stop! The door to the garage had closed behind Dawson. He couldn't hear them. Shit! Amy charged across the kitchen and fumbled with the locks on the door. Which one was the catch? She finally found it, ready to wrench it open until she realized she was about to grind metal against metal in a room full of gas. Instead, she turned it very carefully. There was a faint smell of gas down in the garage too, Dawson noticed. But if anything, it was even weaker than in the kitchen. Nothing to worry about. Unseen by Dawson as he walked past the garbage can towards the sleek nose of the waiting Mercedes, the air seemed to shimmer and swirl, dust gently stirring and rising into the air, as though being wafted in his direction by an invisible fan. Amy threw the door open and raced down the stairs 2 at a time. Hey, stop! Stop! Dawson had already raised his hand, thumb over the button on the head of his car key, to deactivate the alarm and unlock the doors. Even as he heard Amy shouting behind him, and the sound of her and Jack clattering down the stairs, his thumb twitched. Clip! The Mercedes headlights flashed. Motors whirred. Inside the doors, unlocking them. The alarm system disarmed itself. Somewhere inside the complex wiring of the car, a tiny spark crackled between 2 terminals, impossibly overcoming all the precision engineering safety features designed to prevent exactly that occurrence. The spark touched the layer of gas that had lazily rolled down the stairs from the leaking pipe and pulled, undetected, on the floor of the garage. The gas ignited. Amy and Jack burst into the garage, just in time to see a circle of blue flame leaping outwards from beneath the engine of the Mercedes. In the blink, the flames reached Dawson, spiraling up and around him, circling him like a fiery snake, fading the thin gas already consumed before it could harm him. Dawson let out a shriek of fear that quickly faded as he realized he was still alive, still unhurt. He'd felt the heat of the blue flame on his hands, his face, but now he was safe.
Jesus!
Amy and Jack were frozen at the bottom of the stairs next to the trash can, almost afraid to move. Are you okay? Amy cautiously asked.
Ha!
Dawson gasped in amazed relief, turning to face them.
I'm okay! I'm okay! Holy shit!
He clutched at his chest, hands trembling with the shock of the close call, and laughed.
I'm okay!
The last dying flickers of the blue flame touched the line of gasoline that had leaked from the damaged filler cap. Amy saw a brief flash of orange light shoot up the side of the Mercedes. The broken cap had also allowed highly flammable petroleum vapor to build up behind the flap that covered it. The vapor ignited. The flap was blown open, letting oxygen feed the flames as they raced hungrily down the filler tube, leading into the car's capacious fuel tank. The entire back end of the Mercedes exploded. The force of the blast directed backwards like a rocket as a welded seam in the fuel tank was ripped open. The car flew forward. Dawson whirled around just in time to see his car leap at him like a pouncing lion. The explosion lifting it right off the ground as it shot across the garage and smashed into him at waist height, instantly snapping his ribs and spine with a horrible crack audible even over the thump of the explosion, and mashing his vital organs into a gory pulp. The flying, blazing Mercedes, Dawson folded over its hood and front bumper in a starburst of blood, slammed into the garage can, flattening it against the wall of the garage less than a foot from Jack and Amy. They dived to the floor as a fountain of trash and gore, and blazing fragments of metal carved through the air above them. Silence. Jack struggled upright, ears still ringing from the deafening bang of the explosion and the crunch of metal when the car hit the wall. Tiny crystals tinkled to the concrete floor as he moved, fragments of safety glass from the car's windows. He and Amy were covered in them, along with shreds of refuse from the flattened can, and spots of blood. "Are you okay?" he asked Amy as she rolled over, dazedly brushing glass from her clothes. I think so. What happened to... Oh God!" They both stood staring at the remains of the car, flames still dancing inside it. The front end had been completely crushed, embedded almost a foot deep in the wall of the garage, along with the almost unrecognizable twisted remains of the garbage can, and Dawson Donahue. It was another interrogation room, another police station. But Jack couldn't see any real differences between the one at the 12th Precinct and this one at Forest Hills. Especially, he thought, since Pete Bereave was just as angry with him as he had been the other night. Bereave was technically outside his jurisdiction, being based in Manhattan, but despite being over the bridge, Queens still fell under the watch of the NYPD. As Jack was finding out, NYPD cops gave each other a lot of latitude, particularly when another NYPD cop was involved in an investigation. Bereave had come in part way through Jack's interrogation, having apparently been watching Amy's questioning in another room, and had done nothing but glower menacingly at him. Two other detectives were handling the questioning. They weren't Morris and Cohan, but their attitudes were much the same. An outwardly relaxed, just-the-facts approach to questioning that concealed a steely determination to prise the answers out of him. The questions this time were different, though. "So," said Detective King, a thin-faced man with slicked black hair, who was sitting opposite Jack at the interrogation room's desk. We know that you were at Donahue's company this afternoon. You say you were there to warn him that his life was in danger." "That's right," Jack said. "The company receptionist made a call to Donahue's security firm that said you were stalking him, that you were threatening his life," chipped in King's partner, a slim, dark-haired woman called Combs, who was sitting on the end of the desk. Under normal circumstances, Jack would have found her attractive, but since he was stuck in a police precinct, and she was by far the more aggressive of the two detectives, the circumstances were definitely not normal. "That's not true," Jack protested wearily. "We've got a transcript of the call right here," said Combs, waving a piece of paper at him. "I don't care what it says there. She just made the call that Donahue told her to make." "You've had an exciting couple of days, haven't you?" King observed, making a show of carefully laying out some pieces of fax paper on the desk in front of him. "2 nights ago, you shoot a man in order to save the life of a police officer. Officer Bereave's partner, in fact." He glanced at Bereave, who was lurking in a corner of the interrogation room, arms folded, glaring at Jack. "Then yesterday, you try to save the life of a homeless man who wants to jump off a building. He still jumps, but by a 1,000,000-to-1 fluke, he survives. And instead, a news reporter who spoke to you just a few minutes before dies instead. After that, we find your footprints in a warehouse at a wharf on the Hudson. The same warehouse that Officer Tom discovered was apparently where her attacker had been living. Funny thing, though, she never mentioned that you were there with her. Jack said nothing, but felt considerably more worried than before, as much for Amy as himself. If she'd been caught lying during an investigation, her career could be over. And worse still, she might even face charges. For what? He wasn't entirely sure, but he was certain they would be able to come up with something. "And now today," King continued, "you worried Donahue's people enough for them to call the police, then later on show up at his house just before his car explodes and kills him. 3 people dead in less than 48 hours, and you're there each time. Now what are we supposed to think, Jack?" "I shot that man in self-defense," Jack insisted, "and Officer Tom backed me up on it. Chelsea Cox died because she was hit by falling ice. I mean, what? You think I somehow persuaded her to stand in that exact spot where I deliberately busted a pipe to make icicles, then threw my friend off a roof so he'd hit a phone line and make the ice fall?" "You know, when he puts it like that, the man has a point," Combs said to King, before returning her attention to Jack. "The thing is, though, when somebody like Dawson Donahue dies, in very suspicious circumstances, I might add, it tends to become a very high-priority case. What with his connections to City Hall and all. So the forensic work gets put at the top of the list. Now you say that you and Officer Tom entered the garage just before the car exploded?" "Yes," Jack said, deciding to keep his answers as short as possible. Combs had a look in her brown eyes that suggested she was about to drop a bombshell, and he had no idea what it could be. "So you were nowhere near the car. You couldn't have touched it or intended any type of interference with it in any way?" "No!" Combs hopped off the table and slowly walked around to stand behind her partner's shoulder. "And you didn't touch it afterwards? Say, to see if Donahue was still alive?" "No, it was still on fire, and Donahue, he was dead." "Did you or Officer Tom try to check him for signs of life?" "There wasn't much point," Jack said uneasily. "He was kind of splattered all over the wall." "So you didn't touch the car?" "No." "Interesting," Combs said, a hint of "I've got you now" enthusiasm in her voice. "Because we found your fingerprints on the car, right by the filler cap, which is where you, Officer Tom, and forensics all say the explosion started. Maybe you'd like to tell me how they got there if you never touched the car." Shit. Jack had completely forgotten about his encounter with Donahue at the gas station, but now he could see how it could turn into the noose that hung him again. "That was earlier on," he began, trying to remember exactly what happened. "It was right after Donahue left his office. He was filling up his car at the gas station across the street, and he was using his cell phone. I thought his car was going to blow up." "Very civic-minded of you." The sarcasm came from Combs, not Bereave. The burly cop had seemingly decided to keep his mouth shut now that he wasn't on his home turf. "So what exactly happened?" King asked. I was on the phone to Officer Tom." "Cell phone?" "No, a payphone by the gas station, by all the garbage trucks."
"What were you calling her about?" Combs demanded.
"I was asking if she could come pick me up."
"So you've got her acting as your personal taxi service now?"
said Bereave. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to Jack since entering the room, and he almost spat the words between his teeth in seething anger. Combs gave him a look of warning before turning back to Jack.
"Then what?"
she asked. "Then I saw him take out his cell phone to answer a call, right while he was standing there with the filler cap open pumping gas. so I ran out of the phone booth to stop him." "Stop him how?" said King. "I knocked the phone out of his hand," Jack admitted. "So he hit me, knocked me down." His brow creased as he remembered the scene. "That must have been when I touched the car. I fell against it." The horrible thought occurred to him that he might actually have been responsible for damaging the filler cap in the first place, that he had somehow unwittingly been a part of the chain of events that led to Donahue's death. "And you didn't tamper with the filler cap in any way?" "No, of course not. I was trying to save him, not kill him," said Jack. The detective shared a look, then glanced up as someone knocked on the door. Another detective, a man whom Jack had briefly seen earlier with Amy when they'd been brought to the police station, leaned into the room and gestured for Combs and King to join him outside. They left the room, leaving Jack alone with Bereave.
"3 people dead, Curtis,"
said Bereave, stepping forward the instant the door closed.
"And you've somehow dragged Amy into the middle of all of it."
"I haven't dragged anyone," Jack told him. "She wanted to help me."
"You have any idea what you've got her into, Curtis?"
Bereave snarled, standing at the table and leaning against it, lowering his face towards Jack's.
"They're questioning her next door. Questioning her! They want to know what the hell she was doing turning up at Dawson Donahue's house right at the moment he died. They think you're responsible somehow, and because she was with you, that means they think she's an accessory."
"I didn't kill him," Jack insisted. Bereave narrowed his eyes.
"You think a shave and a clean shirt changes anything?" he said. "You're still a fucking bum. I don't know what you've said, what you've done to get her to risk throwing away her entire career, but I'm not going to let that fucking happen. Do you hear me? If you cause her any kind of harm whatsoever."
"You're gonna do what?" Jack snapped. He'd finally had enough of Bereave's threats. "You gonna shoot me? Is that it?" Face twitching with anger, Bereave jabbed a fat finger at Jack's face.
"I'm warning you, Curtis. You stay the fuck away from her."
Jack was about to reply when the door opened again. Combs and King re-entering the interrogation room. Bereave hastily stepped back from the desk. The detectives didn't return to their positions, instead waiting just inside the door. Jack looked at them. Combs spoke first. "Looks like you're free to go, for now." Bereave exploded.
"Say what?"
"Donahue made a call to the gas company to say there was a gas leak at his house, from Tom's own cell phone about 5 minutes before the time of death. The call was recorded and has been checked out. It was his voice. He didn't sound afraid for his life or even concerned. More pissed off, really."
"So what?"
demanded Bereave.
"Doesn't mean Curtis here didn't kill him."
"The gas company engineers checked out the house after Donahue died," Combs continued, annoyed at being interrupted. "They found a small leak in a pipe in the kitchen. So that checks out. And from the volume of gas that escaped and the rate it was leaking, there's no way Mr. Curtis could have had time to have caused it somehow. Now please don't interrupt my partner when he's speaking like that."
"How do you know?"
Bereave asked. "We've checked the traffic cameras on the Queensboro Bridge and Queens Boulevard," King started again. "They saw Officer Tom's car with 2 people inside after the time the leak must have started," explained King.
"You don't know the other person wasn't Curtis," said Bereave.
Combs raised an eyebrow. "So you're accusing your own partner of lying?" Bereave's face fell as he realized what he'd just said.
No, hell no. I didn't mean."
"I thought you didn't," Combs said, a tiny smile creasing one corner of her mouth. "As far as preliminary forensics goes, there's no evidence of any kind of explosive device. No sign that the car was deliberately sabotaged. No evidence that the leaking pipe was tampered with in any way. There's nothing to contradict Mr. Curtis's statement, or Officer Tom's either. That doesn't mean something else might not turn up. But for now." "So I can go?" Jack asked cautiously. I think I already told you that, and my partner told you that, Combs said in a somewhat snippy tone. Jack stood up. But we might have more questions for you later, she added just as Jack passed her. And for Officer Tom. Bereave looked pained and launched into an angry objection, but Jack had already left the interrogation room and closed the door behind him. Looking around, he saw Amy sitting on a bench further up the corridor. She stood up as he walked over. "How did it go?" he asked. Amy made a sour face. "I think I'm going to have to answer some really tough questions when I get back to work," she said. "The whole business about how I found the warehouse came up again, and I don't think they believed what I told them. Plus, they know that you were there as well. They matched your footprints to the ones in the alley where you saved me. Oh boy, this is going to be fun." "What about tonight? About Donahue?" "I told them exactly what I saw happen," Amy said. "He used the remote for his car. It lit the gas in the garage, which lit a fuel leak and blew the car up. I just didn't mention anything about visions or premonitions of explosions, but," she continued, looking unhappy, "I'm probably going to have to at some point. They already wanted to know how I found out Donahue's home address, which technically is a breach of department rules in itself." "I'm sorry," Jack said, meaning it. "I'm sorry for dragging you into all of this, I mean." "You didn't drag me into anything, Jack," she assured him. "I did this all of my own accord." "Funny," Jack said. "That's exactly what I told Bereave in there." "Pete's still in there?" Amy looked in the direction of the interrogation room. "What's he doing?" "Complaining about me, I guess. Although," he said as he saw the door open, "maybe you can ask him yourself." Bereave emerged from the room, face beet red with rage. He spotted Jack standing with Amy and stormed over to them. "Pete," Amy began, trying to calm him down, but Bereave had already started talking.
"Amy, what the hell are you doing with this guy?"
he said, moving between Amy and Jack.
"Don't you know how much trouble he's going to get you into?"
"Pete, listen."
"No, you listen! They just told me that the department's going to have to keep investigating all this. That internal affairs might even get involved. Is that what you want? This guy's going to kill your career and maybe even get you charged with something if you stick with him any longer."
"Jesus, Pete!" Amy finally shouted, startling him into silence. "Listen to me. Jack's not forcing me to do anything. He hasn't hypnotized me, or drugged me, or coerced me into helping him, okay? I'm doing this because I'm trying to save lives."
"Whose lives?"
Bereave asked, instantly suspicious.
"And why are they in danger?"
I can't tell you that," Amy said reluctantly. "You wouldn't believe me anyway."
"But you believe him."
Bereave gave Jack a nasty look over his shoulder.
"You won't tell me what's going on, but you let this guy walk into your life out of nowhere and take over? How does he know who's going to die?"
"I can't tell you that either. But what he said, what I've seen, means I believe him." Bereave let out a noise of frustration, stepping back and clenching his fists.
"Why the hell can't you tell me, Amy? Talk to me! You know that I've always looked out for you, that we've never had any secrets from each other. What's changed now? What's so goddamn special about this guy Curtis? What does he know that you won't tell me?"
Amy clenched her jaw, torn between loyalty to her partner and mentor and the understanding that she could cause a great deal of damage to her career. "Pete," she finally said, "this is off the record, okay? You have to promise me that." Bereave seemed equally torn before reluctantly nodding.
"Okay, Amy. Off the record. What's going on?"
"The thing is," said Amy, dropping her voice almost to a whisper, "is that Jack had a vision."
"He what?"
"He had a vision," Amy repeated. "A premonition. Now, I don't know how it happened or what the hell it means, but all I do know is that if he hadn't had it, I'd be dead now. That guy in the alley would have killed me. And he saw Chelsea Cox and Donahue dying too. He was trying to save them. Bereaved stared at her for a long moment, chewing at the bottom of his mustache.
Jesus, Amy, he finally exclaimed. Have you heard yourself? This isn't you. You must have... That bang on the head must have fucked you up somehow, because you are not thinking straight.
I'm thinking just fine, Pete, Amy said, her own anger starting to rise at being patronized.
Then why can't you see what's happening? Said Bereave, almost pleading. You're gonna wreck your life if you carry on like this. If you keep listening to Curtis and letting him pull you into whatever the fuck it is he's doing, premonitions my ass. Look, please, just come with me. I'll take you home. You can just rest, recover from everything that's been going on.
Pete, Amy cut in. Listen, I'm absolutely fine. I know what I'm doing, and I don't need you to protect me, okay? You got that? Am I clear? Jack, let's go, she said, pulling on her coat and turning her back on Bereave. Jack stepped warily around the cop, pulling on his own coat. Bereave stood frozen for a moment, then rushed forward to block Amy's path. Get out of my way, Pete, she told him.
Amy!
She looked up into his face, eyes full of controlled fury. Out of my way! Bereave took the hint and stepped aside to let Amy pass. He glared hatefully at Jack as he followed her. They left the precinct and headed into the cold night towards Amy's car. So, Jack said, hoping he'd given Amy enough time to calm down a little. What are you going to tell them? Internal affairs, I mean. Have to tell them the truth, I guess. Just hope they believe me. They reached the car. We'll just have to find the other people and warn them before they end up like Donahue. Look, Amy, Jack said as he got into the car. I don't want to be the one who loses your job or anything like that. If you want to try to fix things up, get out of this whole thing, I totally understand. It's a bit late for that now, isn't it? Amy said with a distinct edge to her voice. She started the car and pulled away from the curb, making a U-turn to head back to Manhattan. Her voice softened. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay, Jack assured her. I probably deserved it. I've kind of, disrupted your life. Jack, Amy reminded him, you saved my life. The least I can do is help you, especially if it means saving other people's lives as well. She smiled at him. Thanks, said Jack, returning the gesture. His stomach chose that moment to make a loud gurgling sound. Oh, hey, excuse me. I know how you feel, Amy said. What say we go find something to eat? Okay, guys, this has been Chapter 7 of Final Destination, Death of the Senses. And it has been the final destination of the fate of one Dawson Donahue. May he rest in peace. Thank you very much to DK, a.k.a. at True Resident Evil on Twitter. Thank you so much for helping me get this book so I could narrate this for all the listeners. And thank you for doing the voice of Dawson Donahue. He had a great arc and an amazing death. Far more entertaining death than Chelsea Cox had. Although hers was pretty abrupt and came out of nowhere. You know, I could just feel the tension building. I could feel Dawson's death coming. You know, I was like, how's it going to happen? How is this going to go down? And, yeah, the explosion, the way everything went down, the false starts and everything, when you thought something else was going to happen, but it didn't. It really felt like the movies. And I feel like Andy McDermott, the author of this book, really had a feel for the source material. He really respected it. I can tell he's a fan of it. At least he did some research at the very least. And yeah, this book has been very entertaining so far, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. But as of right now, Jack and Amy are getting into some really hot water. Bereave is getting to a boiling point. I mean, at what point is this guy going to just beat the snot out of Jack? I mean, he seems like he's on that line right now. And how many more of these accidental deaths can happen with Jack and Amy around before they get put in jail? And if they are put in jail, what happens to them trying to stop Death's plan then? Or does Death find them there? And they don't even know everybody on the list yet. They don't know who the rapper is. They don't know who the sixth victim is. I cannot wait to get back to this book. I cannot wait to see what happens. Guys, click that like button. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you thought of tonight's upload and the book so far. And I'll be back very soon. Very, very soon, because I can't wait to find out what happens. I'll be back very soon with Chapter 8 of Final Destination, Death of the Senses. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and I'm okay. Holy shit! I'm okay!